At 25, I did something no one expected. I sold my mom's beach house, and what she didn't know would change everything between us. I remember the first time I walked into that sun-soaked beach house. I was just 25, full of ambition, nerves, and a sense of independence I hadn't fully explored yet. Mom had owned it for decades, her sanctuary tucked right on the edge of the ocean. Every corner held memories, laughter, summer parties, quiet mornings with coffee, and long walks on the sand. But to me, it also felt like a weight, a house filled with rules, expectations, and a life that wasn't entirely mine. Mom was careful, protective, and sometimes a little controlling. I loved her, of course, but I also craved freedom, decisions that were my own, and the thrill of taking life into my own hands. The opportunity came quietly, almost like fate. A buyer appeared, generous and discreet, someone who could take the property without raising questions. It was a risk. Selling Mom's beach house without her knowing. That was more than a risk, it was a storm waiting to happen. Yet I couldn't resist. The house had been tied to Mom's routines, her stories, her control. I was 25. I wanted to make a move, to see if I could pull off something bold, something that would define me on my own terms. As I signed the papers, my heart pounded. The adrenaline mixed with guilt, excitement, and that strange thrill that only comes when you step into forbidden territory. I kept thinking, she'll never see this coming. Not a clue. Little did I know, this one decision would start a chain of events, moments of tension, secrets, and revelations that would forever alter our relationship. But at that moment, standing there with the pen in my hand, I felt powerful, independent, unstoppable. That was the day I realized life wasn't just about following rules. Sometimes it's about taking bold steps, even if it means stepping into the unknown. I had signed the papers, but the hardest part wasn't the sale, it was keeping the secret from Mom, watching her blissfully unaware while my plan unfolded. The moment I walked out of the office, papers in hand, a wave of excitement mixed with guilt washed over me. The beach house was sold. Legally, technically, it was no longer hers. But emotionally, that was a whole different storm waiting to hit. I spent the ride home thinking about Mom, how she would react, how shocked, hurt, and maybe even furious she'd be. Yet, there was a part of me that felt alive, daring, unstoppable. At 25, this was my first big gamble, my first bold declaration that I could control my life, even if it meant crossing a line. Back at my small apartment, I started organizing everything meticulously. I had to ensure the transaction was seamless, anonymous. I made calls, verified documents, and double-checked every detail. Every precaution mattered. One slip, one accidental hint, and the whole plan would collapse. Evenings were the hardest. Mom would call, laughing about her plans for the beach house, her excitement about summer visits, new furniture, little renovations she wanted. Each call stabbed a little, a reminder of the secret I carried and the truth I was hiding. Yet, hiding it made the thrill almost unbearable. Every moment became a game, balancing my normal conversations with Mom while keeping the truth tucked away like a hidden treasure. I thought about the day she would find out. Would she cry? Yell? Forgive? Punish? The uncertainty gnawed at me. But at 25, I realized that life sometimes demands daring risks. And this risk, selling her beach house, was mine to take. Little did I know, this secret would set the stage for confrontations, confessions, and lessons far bigger than a mere property sale. It was a lesson about independence, choices, and the complicated ties between a mother and a daughter. That night, as the city lights twinkled below my window, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. At 25, I was no longer just a girl following her mom's rules. I was a woman making decisions that could shape both of our lives forever. I thought I was careful, but nothing stays hidden forever, especially from a mother who knows you better than anyone. It started with a small comment during our weekly video call. Mom was scrolling through her phone, showing me pictures of the beach house she was planning to decorate for the upcoming summer. "Didn't you see that email from the realtor?" she asked casually, her eyebrows slightly furrowed. "I thought I sent you the confirmation about the inspection date." My heart skipped a beat. Inspection date? I forced a laugh, hiding the panic that bubbled beneath the surface. Oh, yeah, I must have missed that, I said, keeping my tone light and casual. Thanks for letting me know. Even though I laughed it off, I could feel the gears turning in her mind. Mom had always been sharp, perceptive, the kind of person who notices the tiniest details. I realized quickly that selling the beach house wasn't just about paperwork, it was about keeping one step ahead of her intuition. The next day, I started noticing little things. A question about a key I didn't have, a mention of a repair bill I never saw. Each time, my stomach tightened. The thrill of my secret was now mixed with fear, the fear that she would catch on, that my gamble would crumble before it even fully paid off. I had to be careful. Every conversation became a balancing act, each word weighed and measured. Even my casual smiles during calls were strategic, hiding the truth behind warmth and normalcy. At 25, I realized that secrets have a life of their own. They grow, they shift, and sometimes they betray you. And my secret, the sale of the beach house, was quietly creeping closer to discovery with every passing day. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I wondered if the excitement and independence I had felt when signing the papers were worth this tension. Yet, I couldn't turn back. I had made my move, and now I had to see it through. Mom was perceptive, relentless even, but I was determined. I had a plan. And at 25, I was determined to prove I could take control of my life, even if it meant facing the storm that was surely on its way. The closer Mom got to discovering the truth, the more I realized I had to be meticulous. Every detail, every word, every interaction mattered. The days following her subtle hints were a whirlwind of careful planning. Every time Mom mentioned the beach house, my mind raced. I replayed conversations, double-checked emails, and even rehearsed responses in front of the mirror. At 25, I had never felt so much like a secret agent, balancing exhilaration with anxiety. I created fake email chains, small reminders that suggested the house was still intact and under her name. Every document, every note, was meticulously arranged to avoid suspicion. I even made calls to the buyer, ensuring they remained discreet and cooperative, unaware of the drama their purchase had triggered on the other side. Yet, the tension was relentless. Every morning, I woke with a knot in my stomach, anticipating that one question or comment that would expose me. Mom had always been sharp, intuitive, and I knew it was only a matter of time before her suspicion escalated. Even simple interactions became minefields. A casual mention of the beach house during lunch with friends? Potential risk. Mom commenting about her plans to paint the walls or fix the deck? Another minefield. I was trapped in a delicate dance, trying to live normally while protecting a secret that could shatter everything. At 25, I discovered that secrecy is exhausting. It demands vigilance, creativity, and constant energy. Each day, I navigated a web of half-truths and clever deflections, trying to maintain my independence without igniting my mother's alarm. Despite the stress, there was a thrill I couldn't deny: the power of having taken control, the sense of daring, and the knowledge that this decision, though risky, was entirely mine. Selling the beach house was more than a transaction. It was a declaration of independence, a step into adulthood where my choices, my courage, and my cunning would define me. And so, I pressed on. At 25, I knew the storm was coming, but I also knew I had to face it head on. Every day was a test, and I was determined to prove that I could navigate it, secrets and all. I thought I was careful, until the first real moment hit me, and I realized Mom was closer to finding out than I had ever imagined. It was a quiet afternoon when Mom stopped by unexpectedly. I hadn't prepared for a visit, hadn't rehearsed my responses, and my carefully constructed alibi was suddenly hanging by a thread. She walked in smiling warmly, holding a cup of tea and talking about the beach house, about new furniture she wanted to order, and renovations she'd planned for the summer. My heart pounded. Every word she spoke was like a spotlight on the secret I had tried so hard to bury. "Didn't you check the email from the realtor about the deck repairs?" she asked casually, glancing at me over her cup. Her tone was light, but her eyes were sharp, always sharper than anyone realized. I forced a laugh, keeping my voice steady. "Oh, I must have missed that. Thanks for telling me, Mom." My fingers twitched, my mind racing for explanations, excuses, any deflection I could use. For the first time, I felt true panic. The thrill of secrecy was gone, replaced with a deep, gnawing fear. At 25, I had made bold choices, but bold choices came with consequences, and this was my first taste. Mom wandered around the living room, talking about memories in that house, unaware, or so I hoped, that I had just sold it. Every step she took, every glance, felt like it could expose me. My careful planning was suddenly under siege by the simplest things: her intuition, her presence, her love that knew me too well. I realized then that independence came with responsibility, not just for myself, but for every ripple my choices caused. My secret wasn't just mine. It had implications for the woman who had given me everything. That afternoon ended without discovery, but the lesson was seared into my mind. Secrets have a way of creeping up when you least expect them. And at 25, I was learning that courage and risk are always accompanied by the tension of near exposure. As she left, hugging me tightly, I felt a mix of relief and dread. I had survived the first confrontation, but I knew it wouldn't be the last. The storm was far from over, and the next wave would be even bigger. The first near discovery taught me one thing: I had to outsmart Mom at every turn or risk everything unraveling. That evening, I sat at my small desk, sketching out strategies like a general planning a campaign. Every detail mattered: emails, phone calls, casual conversations, even my social media activity. I couldn't afford a single slip. At 25, I was learning that independence wasn't just about bold moves, it was about careful, precise execution. I started creating plausible scenarios to divert her attention. A fake inspection report here, a fabricated maintenance call there. Even little things, like leaving my phone in view or casually mentioning errands, were all part of the act. Each action was a thread in a web designed to keep the beach house a secret. Mom continued her routines, blissfully unaware, yet I could sense her instincts nudging closer. Every time she mentioned the house, I felt my stomach twist, my mind racing for explanations. But I smiled, laughed, and deflected like a seasoned actor, hiding the storm behind calm eyes. At 25, I was experiencing the duality of exhilaration and fear. The thrill of having made a daring decision, the sale of her cherished beach house, was addictive. Yet the tension of being discovered at any moment was equally consuming. It was like walking a tightrope over a raging ocean. One misstep and everything could crash down. I even started keeping a small notebook, documenting what I told her, what she asked, and how I responded. It became my lifeline, a tool to ensure consistency in my story and protect the secret I had so carefully crafted. As days turned into weeks, the diversions worked. Mom mentioned nothing suspicious, nothing that hinted at discovery. But I couldn't relax, not yet. Secrets have a way of growing teeth when you least expect it. And at 25, I was learning that the art of secrecy is as much about patience as it is about cleverness. That night, lying in bed, I allowed myself a small victory smile. I had survived the first wave, but I knew there would be more questions, more curiosity, more moments that could unravel everything. And I was ready. Even with my clever diversions working, I couldn't escape the feeling gnawing at me, the guilt that came with betraying the woman who raised me. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my window, but I felt none of its warmth. Sitting at my tiny kitchen table, coffee in hand, I stared blankly at the notes I had prepared for Mom. At 25, I was supposed to feel liberated, powerful, independent, but all I felt was a pit in my stomach. Mom had always been kind, protective, full of love and trust. And here I was, carrying a secret that could crush her spirit. The thought made my hands tremble slightly, my heart ache. The thrill of independence was there, yes, but so was the weight of betrayal. I remembered a moment from my childhood, sitting on her lap, listening to her laugh as waves lapped at the beach house deck. That memory clashed violently with the secret I now held, making me question my audacity. At 25, I had crossed a line that I couldn't easily uncross. Throughout the day, I kept busy cleaning, making calls, running errands, but the guilt was always there, lurking in quiet moments. Every time I spoke to Mom, laughed at her jokes, or shared casual updates, The lie weighed heavier. My smile felt fragile, my laughter forced. Yet, despite the guilt, I knew I couldn't undo what I had done. The sale was complete. The papers were signed. My independence had been claimed, but at a cost I hadn't fully anticipated. At 25, I realized that adulthood often means navigating the murky waters of tough choices, where right and wrong blur under the weight of ambition and desire. That evening, I sat on my bed, notebook in hand, reflecting on the duality of freedom and consequence. I had taken a bold step, proven my independence, and yet, the ache of guilt reminded me that power without consideration can be heavy indeed. I promised myself one thing: I would navigate this carefully, balancing my newfound independence with the respect and love I still held for Mom. The path ahead would be treacherous, but at 25, I was learning that courage is often measured not by what you do, but by how you live with the choices you've made. Secrecy only lasts so long, and at 25, I was about to face the first real challenge, the creeping suspicion that could expose everything. It happened on a quiet afternoon. Mom called me, her voice lighter than usual, but with a sharp edge hiding underneath. "You've been really busy lately," she said. "I hope everything's okay with the beach house." My chest tightened. That casual remark carried weight, a probing question disguised as concern. I smiled, forcing nonchalance. "Oh yeah, everything's fine. Just caught up with work," I replied, praying my voice didn't betray me. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Later that day, she sent a message. "Let's check on that deck repair together this weekend." My stomach dropped. A joint inspection? That could uncover everything. Panic surged through me like cold water. I realized then that my clever diversions weren't enough. I needed a more sophisticated strategy, a way to redirect her focus while keeping the secret intact. At 25, I understood for the first time that independence required not just boldness, but cunning and foresight. I spent the evening crafting excuses and creating small diversions, calls, errands, and plausible delays to make her believe the house was untouched. Each message, each phone call had to be perfectly timed, perfectly convincing. Any misstep, and my secret would unravel. That night, I reflected on the tension creeping into our relationship. Mom's intuition was sharper than I expected, and her love made her notice even the tiniest irregularities. I couldn't underestimate her. At 25, I had learned that intelligence, intuition, and persistence were a powerful combination, one that could turn my daring act into disaster if I wasn't careful. Despite the fear, a spark of excitement lingered. The first confrontation wasn't here yet, but the chase had begun. I had sold her beach house, navigated the near discovery, and now faced the thrill of keeping one step ahead. At 25, I felt both alive and terrified, realizing that independence carries with it a responsibility far heavier than I had imagined. I lay in bed that night, notebook by my side, heart racing, ready for the next move. One thing was clear: this was no longer just a secret, it was a test of my wit, courage, and determination. The joint inspection was looming, and at 25, I realized I had to outsmart Mom completely or risk everything falling apart. The weekend arrived faster than I expected. Mom was cheerful, talking about plans for checking the deck and imagining the summer gatherings she wanted to host. My stomach twisted with nerves, but I forced a calm smile. Inside, my mind raced, calculating every move. I knew the inspection could blow my secret wide open. If she saw that the house had changed hands, if she noticed paperwork or conversations that didn't add up, everything I had worked for would vanish. At 25, I had never felt stakes this high. I devised a clever plan. I suggested a casual outing, pretending we needed to run errands before heading to the beach. A call from a friend about a sudden issue at the house bought me a small window. Every action, every word was crafted to delay the inspection without raising suspicion. Mom bought her intuition had no reason to suspect deceit. We laughed, chatted, and went about our day, the inspection postponed, the secret safe, for now. But I knew this was temporary. At 25, I realized keeping independence often means balancing on a knife's edge, careful not to slip. I spent the evening thinking through possible scenarios. What if she wanted to see the house next weekend? Or if she insisted on talking to the realtor herself? My notebook filled with contingencies, alternative explanations, and diversions. Each page was a map for navigating the storm I had created. Despite the fear, there was exhilaration. I had taken a daring step at 25, and now I was testing my wit, creativity, and courage against the sharp instincts of the woman who had shaped me. Every conversation, every carefully staged event, was a small victory, a proof that I could survive in this game of secrecy and independence. By nightfall, I allowed myself a breath of relief. The inspection had been avoided, the house still a secret, and my first real test had been passed. Yet, I knew this was just the beginning. At 25, the thrill of independence came wrapped in tension, fear, and the knowledge that one mistake could undo everything. Even as I outsmarted Mom, a heavy weight settled in my chest, the guilt of betrayal that I couldn't ignore. That evening, I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the weekend. I had avoided the inspection, kept my secret intact, and maintained my independence, but at what cost? Mom's trust wasn't something to take lightly. She had raised me with love, guidance, and faith in my character. And yet, here I was, hiding something monumental from her. The guilt pressed on me like a physical weight, making it hard to breathe. At 25, I was learning that daring moves come with emotional consequences. I thought about the memories tied to the beach house, the laughter, the sunsets, the family gatherings. Selling it wasn't just a financial transaction. It was a disruption of her world. Each memory reminded me of the line I had crossed. Still, the thrill of independence lingered. I had taken control, made a bold decision, and tested my ability to navigate complex situations. But guilt doesn't disappear with logic or strategy. It seeps in quietly, in the moments of solitude, forcing you to confront the ethical cost of your choices. I began journaling, trying to reconcile my actions with my conscience. At 25, I realized that adulthood isn't just about making decisions, it's about facing the consequences, the emotional weight, and the ripple effects of your choices. By nightfall, I allowed myself a small, conflicted smile. I had survived my first wave of discovery and had proven my cunning. But the internal storm, the tug of guilt, love, and responsibility was far from over. The beach house secret wasn't just a challenge against Mom. It was a test of my character, and I was only halfway through. That night, as I closed my notebook and turned off the light, I understood something essential. Courage and audacity are powerful, but they must be tempered with conscience. At 25, the dance between freedom and responsibility had just begun. No matter how careful I was, secrets have a way of slipping through cracks, and at 25, I had my first real close call. It was a rainy afternoon when Mom called unexpectedly. Her voice was cheerful, but there was a subtle sharpness I couldn't ignore. I was thinking of rearranging the furniture at the beach house, she said casually. Maybe repainting the walls too. Did you check the list I emailed you? My chest tightened. That list, the one I had fabricated weeks ago to cover up the sale, was now under scrutiny. I forced a laugh, careful not to let panic seep in. Oh, I must have missed that, Mom. Thanks for reminding me. I'll check it soon. Her intuition was relentless. Every question, every detail, seemed like a test, a spotlight on the secret I was holding. I felt my heart race as I conjured up plausible explanations, hoping my voice sounded convincing. After hanging up, I sank into my chair, heart pounding. At 25, I realized that independence is a constant balancing act. One wrong word, one delayed response, and the carefully constructed web of lies could collapse. I went over everything in my notebook: dates, documents, diversions. Each detail had to align perfectly. The tension was exhausting, but also thrilling in a way I had never experienced. This was adulthood, raw and unfiltered, daring choices and the consequences waiting silently in the wings. That night, I replayed the call over and over in my mind. Every pause, every word, every laugh was scrutinized. I had survived, but barely. The close call taught me something essential. Secrecy isn't just about hiding facts, it's about anticipating every thought, action, and suspicion of the person you're deceiving. At 25, I understood that living independently doesn't just mean making decisions. It means navigating the ripple effects of those decisions, managing fear, guilt, and anticipation all at once. And the beach house secret was becoming a masterclass in all three. As I lay in bed, listening to the rain, I made a silent vow. I would stay ahead, keep clever diversions ready, and prove to myself that I could handle whatever came next. This was my life, my choice, my gamble, and I wasn't backing down. The closer Mom got, the bolder I had to be. At 25, it was time for a major diversion to keep my secret intact. That weekend, I devised a plan so elaborate it made my heart race. I arranged a fake urgent meeting with a friend who was supposedly handling some maintenance issues at the beach house. It sounded plausible, and I timed it perfectly to distract Mom from noticing any irregularities. As Mom chatted on the phone about her plans to visit, I calmly mentioned, "Oh, I have to meet someone about some urgent house matters. Can we do a call later instead?" Her eyebrows rose slightly, curiosity sparking in her eyes, but she agreed. The diversion worked. She had no reason to doubt me. The adrenaline coursed through me. At 25, I realized independence wasn't just about making bold moves, it was about planning, timing, and predicting reactions. Every step had to be flawless. I double-checked my fake emails, phone calls, and notes. The house sale remained hidden, and for now, Mom's trust was intact. Yet the tension was tangible. Every time she mentioned the beach house, my stomach tightened. I had to stay ahead, think several steps in advance, and anticipate her questions before she even asked them. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and terrifying all at once. That evening, I reflected on the audacity of my actions. Selling Mom's beach house at 25 had been a bold gamble, but these clever diversions were what kept the plan alive. I felt a strange mix of guilt and pride, the guilt of deception, and the pride of outsmarting one of the most perceptive people I knew. By nightfall, I was exhausted but satisfied. The major diversion had worked perfectly. Mom's intuition hadn't led her to the truth yet. I had survived this round, but the game was far from over. At 25, I was learning that secrets require not just daring, but constant vigilance, creativity, and courage. As I closed my notebook and dimmed the lights, I knew one thing: this story was far from over, and every choice I made now would shape the path ahead. The beach house secret was safe for now, but the next wave of suspense was already forming on the horizon. Even the best-laid plans can't stop intuition. At 25, I began noticing subtle signs that Mom was starting to suspect something. A few days after my major diversion, I noticed changes in Mom's behavior. Small things: her questions became more pointed, her tone more cautious, and her observations sharper. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but my instincts at 25 told me something was shifting. During a casual phone call, she asked, "Did you notice anything odd about the house lately? Any changes or repairs?" Her voice was calm, but the weight behind the words was undeniable. My heart skipped a beat, and I had to respond carefully, balancing reassurance with deflection. "Oh, nothing unusual," I said lightly, forcing a laugh. "Everything seems perfect. Maybe I'll visit soon and check it myself." I could hear her curiosity simmering beneath the surface, yet she accepted my words, for now. But I knew the moment of truth was approaching. Her subtle questions, combined with her sharp intuition, meant that any slip could expose the secret I had so carefully guarded. At 25, I realized independence and secrecy were a dangerous combination, one that required constant vigilance and foresight. I began strategizing again, creating new diversions, planning excuses, and rehearsing my responses in advance. Every interaction became a calculated maneuver, each word chosen with precision to keep the beach house sale hidden. The tension was relentless, gnawing at me with every passing day. Despite the stress, there was an undeniable thrill in the challenge. Outmaneuvering one of the smartest, most intuitive people I knew made me feel alive, daring, and powerful. At 25, I was discovering that life isn't just about following rules, it's about taking bold steps, thinking creatively, and embracing the consequences of your choices. That night, as I lay awake, I reflected on how far I had come. The secret was still mine, but the walls were closing in. Every small success felt like a victory, and every subtle sign of suspicion reminded me that I had to stay sharp. The next confrontation was inevitable, and I had to be ready. At 25, I had kept the secret alive, but the first real confrontation was unavoidable, and it hit harder than I expected. It started with a casual visit. Mom had insisted on coming over to drop off some things, but I could sense the undertone. She was probing, testing, and I had no choice but to be on high alert. She walked into my small apartment, glancing around, her eyes sharp. "You've been busy, huh?" she said casually, but her tone carried a weight that made my stomach twist. "I thought I'd check in on a few things. Just, make sure everything's okay with the beach house." My heart raced. Every word, every glance felt like a minefield. At 25, I had never been so aware of the power of perception. I forced a smile, keeping my voice calm, steady, light. "Oh, everything's fine. Honestly, nothing to worry about," I said, hoping my act was convincing enough. Mom's eyes lingered on me a moment longer than expected. I felt the tension spike. Her intuition was sharp, like it always had been. This wasn't just curiosity, this was the first real test of my ability to maintain control and protect my secret. Throughout the visit, I navigated the conversation like walking a tightrope. Every topic, every question was a potential threat. I had to remain poised, clever, and believable, or risk losing the trust and control I had carefully maintained. As she left, I exhaled deeply, my pulse still racing. I had survived the first confrontation, but the message was clear. Mom's intuition was alive and alert. At 25, I realized that boldness alone wasn't enough. I needed strategy, foresight, and quick thinking to stay ahead. That night, I reflected on the challenge ahead. The first confrontation had been a test, and I had passed, but only barely. I knew the next wave would be harder, the stakes higher, and the tension even more unbearable. The beach house secret wasn't just a gamble anymore. It was a delicate dance with one of the most perceptive people I had ever known. After the first confrontation, I knew I had to take a daring step, reinforce my story, and divert Mom completely before she got too close. The morning after Mom's visit, I sat at my desk with a determined look. At 25, I realized that cleverness alone wasn't enough. I needed bold moves, actions that would cement my alibi and keep her from even thinking of doubting me. I arranged a series of calls to friends and maintenance contacts, each one carefully timed to provide evidence that the house was under control, untouched, and fully in Mom's name. Every detail had to match up: emails, phone calls, confirmations, like a perfectly choreographed performance. As I executed the plan, I could feel the tension melting slightly. Mom's suspicion had reached a peak, but now I was creating layers of reassurance that would divert her focus entirely. At 25, I was learning that deception, when done with precision, could be almost elegant. That afternoon, I called her casually. "Hey Mom, just checked on the deck repairs with the team. Everything's perfect, just like you wanted," I said, letting my voice convey calm and responsibility. Her reply was warm, trusting, completely unaware that she had just fallen for the diversion. The satisfaction was intoxicating. For the first time, I felt a measure of control, not just over the house, but over the narrative, over her perception, and over my own fears. At 25, the thrill of independence was paired with strategy, foresight, and the quiet adrenaline of playing a high-stakes game. Yet, beneath the pride, the guilt lingered. Each successful diversion reminded me of the trust I was bending, the love I was deceiving. Independence came at a cost, and the weight of that cost was always there, even amid the triumph. That night, I reflected on what I had accomplished. The alibi was solid, the diversion successful, and the secret safe for now. But I knew the game wasn't over. The tension between freedom and responsibility, audacity and guilt, would continue to grow. At 25, I was learning that life's boldest moves require courage, cunning, and the willingness to live with the consequences. Even with the diversions working, the secret began to weigh on me, and at 25, The emotional strain became impossible to ignore. Days passed, and the thrill of my bold actions started to fade, replaced by a gnawing unease. Mom's trust was precious, and hiding the beach house sale from her felt heavier with each passing day. At 25, I realized that independence isn't just about daring decisions, it's about carrying the emotional consequences that come with them. Every time I spoke to her, laughed at her jokes, or shared daily stories, a small voice inside reminded me of the truth I was concealing. Guilt became a constant companion, lurking in quiet moments and whispering reminders of the line I had crossed. I started journaling more intensely, recording my feelings, the small successes and the close calls. Writing helped, but it didn't erase the tension. At 25, I was navigating a complex web of strategy, emotion, and conscience, each strand pulling me in different directions. One afternoon, while walking through the city, I found myself staring at the ocean, remembering the countless days spent at the beach house. Memories of Mom's laughter, her care, and her pride mixed with the thrill of independence, creating a tangled web of emotion I couldn't untangle. Yet, despite the guilt, I knew I couldn't turn back. The sale was complete, my actions irreversible. At 25, I was learning a hard lesson. Bold decisions carry weight, and independence often comes with a heavy emotional price. By nightfall, I resolved to keep moving forward, to navigate the tension between audacity and morality, daring and responsibility. Each day was a test, each interaction a balancing act, and each diversion a shield against discovery. The beach house secret had become more than a challenge, it was a lesson in courage, consequence, and the messy complexity of growing up. As I closed my notebook, heart heavy but determined, I realized something essential. At 25, life doesn't just hand you freedom, you claim it. You wrestle with it, and you learn to live with the choices you make. Just when I thought I had control, Mom showed up unexpectedly, and at 25, I faced a suspenseful test I hadn't anticipated. It was mid-morning when the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't expected anyone, and certainly not Mom. Peeking through the peephole, I saw her standing there with a bright smile, holding a basket of homemade treats. "Surprise!" she called. "I thought I'd drop by and spend a little time with you." Panic surged. This wasn't part of the plan. I quickly forced a smile, opened the door, and welcomed her in. My mind raced, thinking of diversions, excuses, and ways to prevent her from noticing anything amiss with the beach house or my meticulous fabrications. At 25, improvisation had become a necessary skill. As we chatted, I noticed her eyes scanning the apartment, her curiosity subtly probing. Every glance felt loaded with potential discovery. I guided the conversation carefully, diverting her attention to mundane details: coffee mugs, small household chores, nothing related to the house sale. Yet, the tension was unbearable. I realized that at 25, secrecy isn't just about strategy, it's about managing every nuance of interaction, predicting every reaction, and staying calm when the unexpected strikes. Mom laughed at a joke I made, unaware that her presence had triggered a storm of adrenaline. I mirrored her happiness, but my heart pounded, and my palms were sweaty. Every moment felt like walking on a tightrope, balancing charm, diversion, and deception simultaneously. By the time she left, I was exhausted but relieved. The surprise visit had passed without incident, but the reminder was clear. Mom's intuition was alive and active, and one slip could unravel everything. At 25, I understood that bold moves required not only courage but constant vigilance, even in seemingly ordinary moments. That night, I reflected on the visit. The beach house secret was still safe, but I had to be sharper than ever. Every plan, every diversion, every word now carried more weight than before. The game of independence and secrecy was intensifying, and I was determined to win it. The closer Mom got to uncovering the truth, the bolder I had to become. At 25, I was forced into riskier moves than ever before. The unexpected visit left me shaken, but it also ignited determination. I realized that subtle diversions weren't enough anymore. Mom's intuition was sharper than ever, and I needed a strategy that was bold, clever, and foolproof. I started creating more elaborate distractions. Fake phone calls, staged errands, even fabricated messages from the maintenance team that suggested ongoing activity at the beach house. Each move had to align perfectly, leaving no room for suspicion. At 25, the thrill of independence was now intertwined with the danger of exposure. Every interaction with Mom became a calculated exercise. Her questions, no matter how casual, were treated like tests. I responded carefully, deflecting, reassuring, and diverting attention with precision. The adrenaline coursed through me, a mix of fear and exhilaration that made each day both exhausting and exhilarating. The tension wasn't just external, it was inside me. Guilt gnawed at my conscience, reminding me of the love I was bending, the trust I was manipulating. At 25, I realized that independence carried a heavy emotional price, one that made my heart pound even as my mind schemed. Despite the stress, I couldn't help feeling a sense of pride. I had taken a bold step, claimed autonomy, and navigated a labyrinth of suspense, suspicion, and strategy. Each successful diversion reinforced my control, proving to myself that I could survive in a world where daring decisions had serious consequences. By nightfall, I reflected on the week. The secret remained intact, Mom remained unaware, and I had survived yet another challenge. But the danger was escalating. At 25, I knew the game was intensifying, and the next move would require even more cunning, courage, and foresight. The beach house secret was no longer just a choice, it was a test of character, wit, and resilience, and I was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. Just when I thought I had everything under control, an unplanned event nearly exposed my secret, and at 25, the tension hit its peak. It started with a knock on the door, a neighbor I barely knew, claiming to have an urgent message about the beach house. My heart skipped a beat. Every detail of my meticulous plan suddenly felt fragile, teetering on the edge of disaster. I opened the door, masking my panic with a calm smile. "Oh, hi! What's the matter?" I asked, forcing casual curiosity. The neighbor handed me a letter, glancing at me curiously before walking away. My pulse raced as I realized the letter was addressed to Mom, about the house I had sold. At 25, the stakes had never felt higher. I carefully examined the envelope, making sure no one saw me, and quickly fabricated a story. It must have been a misdelivery, I thought. I planned to intercept it before Mom ever got a chance to see it. The adrenaline coursed through me as I called the courier company, creating a believable excuse to redirect the letter. Each step had to be perfect. One slip and Mom's intuition would unravel everything I had worked so hard to conceal. That evening, I sat at my desk, heart pounding, reflecting on the precarious position I was in. At 25, I realized that independence comes with high-risk consequences, and bold decisions often carry moments of sheer terror. The thrill of control was now coupled with the fear of exposure. Despite the tension, I couldn't deny a strange exhilaration. Each close call reinforced my skills, my resourcefulness, and my ability to think quickly under pressure. The beach house secret had become more than just a daring move, it was a high-stakes game of strategy and survival. By nightfall, I felt a mixture of relief and dread. I had averted disaster this time, but the reminder was clear. At 25, secrecy is a fragile art, and one unplanned event can change everything. The next challenge would come, and I had to be ready. The stakes had never been higher. At 25, I knew I had to pull off my boldest diversion yet or risk the entire secret unraveling. The unplanned near exposure shook me to my core. I realized subtle tricks weren't enough anymore. I needed a move so audacious that Mom's suspicion would be diverted completely. At 25, boldness wasn't optional, it was survival. I devised a plan involving multiple layers of deception. I staged urgent repairs, coordinated fake calls with imaginary contractors, and even sent a few convincing emails to create the illusion that the house was active, maintained, and untouched. Every interaction had to align perfectly, leaving no gap for Mom's sharp intuition to detect. The execution was nerve-wracking. Each call, message, and staged errand carried the weight of potential exposure. My heart raced, palms sweaty, but I forced myself to stay composed. At 25, I was learning that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. Mom's calls and messages that week were frequent, each one a subtle probe, testing my alibi, but the diversion worked. She commented casually about the ongoing repairs, completely unaware that everything was fabricated. Relief surged, but it was fleeting. I knew the pressure was far from over. Evenings became a mix of strategy, reflection, and guilt. The thrill of successfully manipulating reality clashed with the emotional weight of betrayal. At 25, I realized independence carries responsibility, courage carries consequences, and audacity carries a moral cost. By the weekend, I felt a tentative victory. The secret remained intact, Mom's trust undisturbed, and the house sale safely hidden. Yet I knew the climax was approaching. The next confrontation would test my cleverness, composure, and courage like never before. Lying in bed that night, notebook beside me, I allowed myself a small, triumphant smile. At 25, I had executed my boldest diversion yet, but the game was far from over. The final waves of suspense, revelation, and resolution were just ahead. The tension I had been managing for weeks reached its peak. At 25, the confrontation I feared most had finally arrived. It was a Saturday afternoon when Mom unexpectedly announced she was coming to check a few things in person. My heart sank. Every diversion, every carefully staged alibi, was about to face its ultimate test. At 25, I realized that courage, cunning, and composure would all be pushed to their limits. As she walked in, her gaze was sharper than ever. "I thought I'd see the house myself," she said lightly, but her tone carried an unspoken intensity. I smiled, masking the panic rising in my chest. Every word, every gesture had to be perfectly timed. We moved through the apartment, chatting casually, yet I could feel the tension vibrating in the air. Her eyes flicked to subtle details, testing the narrative I had so carefully crafted. My palms were sweaty, but I maintained a calm demeanor, guiding her focus towards safe topics. The climax was a delicate dance. One misstep, one pause too long, one glance too revealing, and the truth could slip through the cracks. At 25, I understood that high-stakes deception was as much about anticipation and timing as it was about daring action. By the time Mom prepared to leave, I had navigated every question, every observation, and every instinctive probe. My boldest diversions had held. Her trust remained unbroken, and the secret, my audacious secret, was still mine. Relief and exhilaration surged through me, but the weight of what I had done lingered. That night, I reflected on the climax. At 25, I had faced fear, deception, and moral conflict simultaneously. I had outwitted intuition, navigated suspense, and proven my independence. Yet the experience left a lasting impression. Bold moves carry emotional consequences, and secrecy is both powerful and precarious. The beach house secret had survived its ultimate test, but the story wasn't over. Closure and reflection awaited in the coming days. After weeks of tension, at 25, I finally began to breathe and reflect on everything I had done. The days following the confrontation felt quieter, yet heavier in their meaning. I had survived the ultimate test, kept Mom's trust intact, and maintained the secret of the beach house sale. But the weight of my actions lingered, a constant reminder of the moral cost of independence. I spent hours journaling, pouring out thoughts, emotions, and lessons learned. At 25, I realized that daring decisions come with responsibilities that aren't always visible in the moment. Independence isn't just about freedom, it's about understanding the consequences of your choices and living with them. The guilt softened slightly with each reflection. I had acted boldly, yes, but I had also navigated a delicate web with care, ensuring no lasting harm came to Mom. My actions were audacious, but they were thoughtful, calculated, and ultimately protective. I began to see a pattern in my own growth. Every risk taken, every diversion executed, had taught me about resilience, cleverness, and the complexities of human relationships. At 25, I was learning lessons that would stay with me for a lifetime. Evenings were spent walking along the city streets, notebook in hand, reflecting on the journey. Memories of the beach house, Mom's laughter, the salty air, and warm sunlight mixed with pride and guilt, excitement and caution. The experience had shaped me, teaching that courage and morality are often intertwined, sometimes in conflicting ways. By the end of the week, I felt a sense of cautious peace. The secret was secure, Mom remained unaware, and I had proven to myself that I could face fear, manage suspense, and make bold choices responsibly. At 25, I had learned the delicate balance between daring independence and moral conscience. I knew one thing: the story of the beach house, the secret, and the daring choices I had made would forever remain a defining chapter of my life, a testament to courage, cleverness, and the challenges of growing up. At 25, the secret had survived, the tension had peaked, and the lessons of audacity, independence, and conscience came crashing together in a moment I would never forget. The morning sunlight spilled through my apartment window as I sipped my coffee, heart still pounding from the weeks of tension and daring maneuvers. The beach house secret was safe, Mom was unaware, and I felt the mix of exhilaration and relief that comes only after surviving a high-stakes test. I thought back to that 25-year-old me, the young woman who had made a daring choice, balanced audacity with cunning, and navigated the fragile threads of trust, intuition, and morality. Selling the beach house had been more than a transaction. It had been a journey into courage, independence, and self-discovery. The guilt and pride intertwined, creating a tapestry of emotions that reminded me of the complexity of life. At 25, I had learned that boldness carries weight, secrets carry consequences, and independence requires both strategy and conscience. I smiled quietly, thinking of Mom. She had no idea of the web I had woven, the diversions I had orchestrated, or the calculated risks I had taken to preserve her trust. And yet, I felt a deep sense of respect for her intuition. It had pushed me to be smarter, braver, and more resilient than I ever imagined. Looking out at the city skyline, I realized that this chapter of my life had changed me. I had discovered the limits of fear, the thrill of cleverness, and the quiet power of mastering one's destiny. At 25, I had learned that life is a series of calculated risks, that courage is tested in moments of tension, and that the choices we make define us. As I closed my notebook, the story complete, I knew one truth: the beach house secret would remain a defining memory, a testament to bravery, ingenuity, and the complex dance between independence and conscience. The young woman I had been at 25 had survived, grown, and emerged stronger, wiser, and forever changed. And in that moment, I finally understood: life's greatest adventures often come with risk, and the sweetest victories are those that test your heart, mind, and spirit all at once.